We continue now at the top of Daf Memches Amud Aleph and Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 48a. And the previous Amud, the Gemara brought a brisa which said that if a person brings his fruits into the chutzner, the balabais, without permission, and a shore comes from the outside and damages those fruits, in that case he is potter. It doesn't identify who he is. And if the fruits are brought in with permission and the shore comes in from the outside and damages the fruits, then he is chayiv. Again, does not identify who the he is referring to. And the Gemara initially assumed that what we're referring to is the owner of the chutzner, in a situation where the owner of the chutzner did not give permission for the person to bring in his fruits, so the owner of the chutzner is potter. But if the owner of the chutzner gave permission, then he's also taking upon himself responsibility for those fruits. And the Gemara wanted to show that that proves he even takes responsibility on damage that comes from the outside. The shore came from the outside, and apparently the Baal Chutzner is chayiv even to that extent. And the Gemara then said that is not what the brisa means. What the brisa actually means is that the owner of the shore is going to be potter if the fruits were put there without permission, but the owner of the shore is going to be chayiv if the fruits were put there with permission. And so the Gemara now asks, well, if that is the case, that we're talking about the owner of the shore, my bereshus u'may shelo bereshus iko, what difference does it make if it was put there with permission or without permission? The owner of this shore has nothing to do with the chutzner. He's not the owner of the chutzner. Who cares if there was permission or not? And the Gemara says, Amri, the answer is as follows. Bereshus, if it happens bereshus, meaning if the person brings his fruits into this property with the permission of the owner of the property, so havala shein bereshus hanizik, then what it is a case of shein in the reshus of the nizik, because since he had permission to be in this property, it's like his own property, it's like the reshus of the nizik, and shein, v'shein bereshus hanizik chayev, is shein in the reshus of the nizik is chayev, and that's why in a situation of reshus, that's why the Baal Hashor is chayev, shelo bereshus, but if he puts his items in there, if he puts his fruits in there without the permission of the Baal HaChotzer, havel shein b'reshus harabim, then it's the equivalent of shein in reshus harabim in the public space. V'shein b'reshus harabim petur, and shein b'reshus harabim we know is going to be potter. And Rashi explains, have a shein b'chutzner hanizik. Again, it's considered to be shein in the chutzner hanizik in a situation where the person had permission to put his fruits there. Dekevan deyoivle bal chutzner reshusa liiyule, since the owner of the chutzner gave permission to the owner of the fruits to put his fruits there. Duchta akni le begava. So it's as if he has a place. He's acquired a place. He's acquired a location within that chutzner. V'havale chutzner hanizik. That's considered to be the chutzner hanizik, and that's why in that situation shein is going to be chayiv. And Rashi notes, v'chutzner hashutfin depater ba'al hashein v'ala regel. There's a halacha that when you have a chutzner of partners, so then we say there's a p'tur, we say there's an exemption by shein and regel. This also seems to be a situation of partnership when the person has permission to put his fruits there, but Rashi says that's confusing two different cases. Hani mili meshutav l'chavrei de chutzner shel shneim. That's talking about a situation where the mazik and the nizik are partners in the courtyard. In that situation, there's a p'tur, there's an exemption on shein and regel. Aval shor me'alma, but here we're talking about a shore coming from the outside. That shore, the owner of that shore is not a partner. The all va'azik, and it's coming in and it's causing damage l'chad minayu to one of these two partners. That already ubir b'steyacher, karinan bay, that's called ubir b'steyacher, and that is considered shein b'reshus hanizik, and the person is going to be chayiv. But then the Gemara said that if the person comes in without permission, so then it's considered shein b'reshus harabim, it's considered to be shein in the public domain, and shein in the public domain is potter. Rashi says lav dafka doesn't really mean reshus harabim, because it's not a real reshus harabim. Kilomar lab b'steyacher denizik karina bay. It simply means it's not considered steyacher. It's not considered the field of the nizik in that case, and that's why the owner of the shore is going to be potter. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here, another proof. Again, the issue over here is, to what extent does the owner of the chutzner take responsibility? Does he even take responsibility on damage that comes from the outside? The Brisa says, Hichnis shoro l'chutzner balabayis shelo b'reshus. If a person brings his ox into the courtyard of the balabayis without permission, uba shor mimakom acher v'nagcho, and a shore comes from the outside and gores it, potter, he is potter. Once again, the Brisa doesn't say who is potter, it just says he is potter. V'im hichnis b'reshus, and if he brings in his shore with permission, so then chayiv, he is chayiv. Once again, it doesn't say who is chayiv. And so the Gemara says, man potter, man chayiv. When this brisa says potter and chayiv, who's the one that's potter? Who's the one that's chayiv? Lav potter bal chotzer, v'chayiv bal chotzer doesn't mean to say that in a situation where he comes without permission, the owner of the chotzer is going to be potter. But if he has the permission of the bal chotzer, then the bal chotzer is chayiv. And you see the bal chotzer takes responsibility even from damage, even on damage that comes from the outside. And the Gemara again answers the same as before, lo no, Pater Bal Hashor v'Chaya Bal Hashor. What it actually means is that the owner of the shore, the owner of that ox coming from the outside, is going to be Pater if the person is there without permission. But if the person is there with permission, then he's going to be Chayiv, meaning again the Bal Hashor is going to be Chayiv. And the Gemara again asks, as it did before, Yachi, if so, my Bereshus, my Shalo Bereshusika, what difference does it make if the person has permission or not? This is the shore from the outside. What difference does it make to the owner of that shore whether this shore that was in the Chatzar was there with permission or not? And the Gemara says, Amri, the answer is as follows, Hamani Rabbi Tarfon. This brisa, who is it? It's authored by Rabbi Tarfon. The Amar Mishuna Karen B'Chatzar HaNizik Nezek Shalem Mishalim. Rabbi Tarfon says that if you have the strange kind of damage of Karen that occurs in the Chatzar HaNizik, you don't pay Chatzi Nezek like a normal situation. If it's the Chatzar HaNizik, then it's actually Nezek Shalem. You pay for full damages, and the difference between Bereshus and Shalo Bereshus is whether it's considered to be the Chatzar HaNizik or not. Bereshus, if the person is there with permission, Havela Karen B'Chatzar HaNizik, that's considered to be Karen in the Chatzar of the Nizik, Umeshalim Nezek Shalem, and that's what it means Chayiv. It means you pay Nezek Shalem. It means you pay the full damages. Shalo Bereshus, but if he's there without permission, Havela Karen Bereshus Harabim, then it's a case of Karen and Reshus Harabim. And when it says Pater, it doesn't mean totally Pater. It just means you don't pay full. V'lo Mashal Ma'ala Chatzi Nezek, and the only amount that's going to be paid is going to be Chatzi Nezek, and so therefore, once again, there is no proof from this brisa in terms of the extent of the obligation of the Baal HaChatzer. And the Gemara continues at the Tudat, Sahi Itasada also Lemeifa Bahu Besa. There was a woman who came to bake in a certain house. Asa Barcha de Mori de Besa, and the goat of the owner of the house came. Achla Lalisha, and it ate the dough. Chavel Umis, and it overheated and it died. Chayva Rava L'Shalume de Me Barcha. So Rava obligated her to pay the value of the goat. And so the Gemara says, Lema pligad Rav, let us say that Rav is arguing on Rav. To Amar Rav, because Rav said, Havalo shelo tochal, we apply the rule of Havalo shelo tochal, and the animal should not have eaten. In a situation where the animal is damaged because it ate something, generally we exempt the person in that situation according to Rav. Rav seems to go against Rav. And the Gemara says, Amri, the answer is as follows, Hachi hashta, what kind of comparison are you making between the two cases? This case is not similar at all. Hasam shelo b'rishus, over there we're talking about a situation where it's shelo b'rishus, the person is there without permission. So lo kabel alenati rusa, so there the person doesn't accept responsibility. But over here in this situation, this woman is coming in birishus, she's coming in with permission. So kabel alenati rusa, so when she comes in with permission, she's accepting responsibility on the damages, and that's why she's responsible in this case to pay for the goat. But the Gemara says, but what's the difference of a case we said earlier? We had a case earlier where a woman comes in to grind wheat by the balabayis, and we said that if she comes in without permission, va'acholton behemto shel balabayis potter. So if the animal of the balabayis eats the wheat, so in that case the owner of the animal, the balabayis, is potter because she's there without permission. V'im huzka, and then it said that let's say it's the opposite. Let's say the animal becomes damaged from the wheat, so chayev. So it said that she's chayev in that situation because she's there without permission. So taima shelo b'rishus, the reason why she's responsible is because she's there without permission. When she's there without permission, so then she's responsible. Ha b'rishus potter, but it sounds like if she would be there with permission, on the contrary, then she would certainly be potter. So why over here all of a sudden are you saying this woman comes in to bake and now she comes in with rishus, and suddenly that means she's taking responsibility and she's chayiv? That doesn't make any sense. And the Gemara says, no, it does make sense. Amri, the answer is as follows. Litchon chitim, when it comes to grinding wheat, that case that we just brought, kevan de lo boitz niyusa, since that's not something that requires privacy, so de lo boitz niyusa midi lo boy misalki marvasa de chaser nafshayu, so in that situation she doesn't need privacy, so the owner of the chaser does not need to remove themselves from the area. And therefore it's his responsibility. The owner of the chaser is the one that takes responsibility. She is not responsible in that case where she has permission to grind the wheat. But when it comes to a situation of a woman who's baking, kevon de boy hits niyusa, so there she needs more privacy with the act of baking. Marvasa de chaser misalki nafshayu, and therefore it's understood that the owner of the chatzar is not going to be present, and she actually is taking responsibility. Hilkach alodi da ramyun tirusa, therefore the responsibility is upon her. And Rashi explains, Hacha b'rishus kabel alena tirusa. Again, the Gemara said the Nitirusa here, where you're talking about a situation where she has permission, so she's accepting responsibility. The Behemto, she's accepting responsibility of the animal. The time of the Rav Alamisham the Kasavar demand the old Bereshus Kabel Alea Nitirusa the Behemos Bal Chatzar. Now, the reason of Rav is not that anybody who comes in with permission is suddenly taking responsibility in the animals of the owner of the Chatzar. Because he's the one that said earlier that the entire Mishnah is the Rabbanon. And he said, on the contrary, the person who comes in with permission is not accepting that responsibility. It's always the person, the host. It's always the owner of the Chatzar that's responsible. And so over here, what is Rav saying? Here the reason is, as we're about to explain, in terms of the requirement of privacy, to Lameifa Boitz Niyusa, that when a woman is baking, she needs privacy. Vestalku Marvasa the Chatzar, and therefore the owner of the Chatzar is not there anymore. And the Gemara that's about to ask the question from the case of the woman who's grinding, it's because they haven't concluded, they haven't finished up the reasoning over here, but again, the reason really is because she requires privacy. And Rashi continues, to bake, that requires privacy. Why? The reason why it requires privacy is because she uncovers her arms. In the act of baking, in general, the woman will uncover her arms. She needs more privacy, and that's why in this case specifically, she has additional responsibility. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Hichnis shoro l'chatzar balabayis. If somebody brings his axe into the chatzar of the balabayis without permission, and then the animal of the balabayis causes damage to that axe, the balabayis is going to be pater because this shore is there without permission. And the Gemara says, Amar Rava says, Hichnis shoro l'chatzar balabayis shelo b'reshus. Again, if a person brings his ox into the courtyard of the balabayis without permission, the chafar ba boros shichnu ma'aros, and then the axe digs holes, it digs pits within the chatzar of the balabayis. Bal hashor chayiv b'nizkei chatzar. So the owner of the shore is chayiv in any damage that happens to the courtyard. Again, the shore is there without permission, causing all kinds of damage to the property. The owner of the shore is going to be chayiv. Ubal chatzar chayiv b'nizkei habor. However, the owner of the chatzar is now chayiv in any damage that bore causes. That's considered to be his responsibility. And the Gemara says, Afagav damar mar, even though the master said, Ki yichra ish bor velo shor bor, it says that it's only when a man digs a pit, but not when an ox digs a pit. But over here in this case, Kevan de isle lahech lemeluye velo kamalye, since the owner is really responsible, meaning the owner of the chatzar is really responsible to fill the pit, and he did not fill the pit, Keman de kariyadami, it's the equivalent as if he dug it, and therefore he is responsible. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rav, and Rava says, Hichnis shoro l'chatzar balabayis shelo b'reshus. If a person brings his ox into the courtyard of the balabayis without permission, v'hizik es balabayis, and it damages the balabayis, or balabayis huzak bo, or the balabayis is damaged by it, chayiv, he's going to be chayiv again because he brought in the animal without permission. Ravatz, now if the animal crouches, so pater, he's pater. And the Gemara says, Umishum de Ravatz pater, because he's crouching, that suddenly makes him pater. What does that mean? And the Gemara explains, Amar Papa says, my Ravatz, what does it mean Ravatz over here? What it actually means is, Shehir bits gelolim. What it means is that the animal dropped feces on the ground, Vinitnafu kelev shel balabayis, and then the clothing of the balabayis became dirty from the gelolim. To have a gelolim bore, because in this situation, the gelolim, the feces, is considered to be a bore. It's considered to be like a pit. Velo matzinu bor shechayev bo asa kelim. We don't find that bor is chayev by kelim. In this case, the clothing of the balabayis is considered to be kelim, and bor is pater on kelim, and that's why Ravatz, in a situation of Ravatz, we say pater. And the Gemara continues, Hanichel Shmuel, that works according to Shmuel. Diamar kolta kola boru, because Shmuel says any kind of stumbling block, obstacle, is considered to be a bore. It's considered to be a bore in this case as well, and it's pater on kelim. Elul Rav, but according to Rav, Diamar ad de mafkirle, who says that the only time it's considered to be a bore is if it's made hefker, as if it's made ownerless. Ma'ikol lemeimar, so what are you going to say in this case? And the Gemara says, Amri, the answer to that, stam gelolim mafkure mafkirlu, in general, when it comes to feces, those are considered to be ownerless, and that's why even according to Rav, it's considered to be a bore. And Rashi explains, Ubal chatzar chayev b'nizkei habor. Again, in the situation where the shore digs pits within the property, we say the owner of the chatzar is chayev in any damage that those pits do. Im hifker reshu. So the case specifically is if he makes his property ownerless, so now people can come into the property and they're damaged by the pit, then he's going to be responsible. V'yafagav dechsev ki yichra ish bor v'lo ki yichra shor bor. Even though it says that the person has to dig the pit and not the ox, hani mili b'bor b'reshus harabim. That's true by a bor in reshus harabim. The lav oled yidei rami lemulu. maluye, then it's not his responsibility to fill it. But over here, kevan de islay lemaluye, since the owner of the chutzner really has a responsibility to fill this pit, mekame delifkre, before he makes ownerless, to habor didehu, because this bore belongs to him, v'chi afkar basar hachi, and then when he later makes it ownerless, no sen takala b'rishas harabim, that's the equivalent of putting a takala in rishas harabim, that's why he's responsible for these pits. And then the Gemara said, huzak bo, a situation where the shore comes in shalo b'rishus, and either the shore damages the balabayas, or the balabayas is damaged by the shore. What that means is sheniskal bo, that he stumbles over the shore and he's damaged. So in that case, the shore is there shalo b'rishus. We say the owner of the shore is chayiv. However, ravat's potter. However, if the animal crouches, then he's potter. Kasal kadaitach, at the beginning we think, kasal kadaitach hashta, right now we think, ravat's v'shiver kalim, that the animal is crouching, and when it's crouching it breaks vessels. O niskal bo balabayas lachar sharavatz, or the balabayas stumbles over the animal after it crouches. That's why the Gemara asks, why should that be a reason for the patur? And then the Gemara said, no, we're talking specifically about feces, and it's the status of a boar, which is patur on kalim. And Rashi explains, v'nitnefu kalav la'achar mikan, and again, the person's clothing become dirtied after that, v'dafka kalav, and specifically the person's kalim, the person's clothing or vessels, aval hu atzmo hu's a chayev balashor, but if the person himself would be damaged by the feces, so then the balashor would be chayev, v'lo patrinan le mishum ish bor v'lo shor, but we don't say over here that again it should be an exemption because it's only when a person digs a pit and not when an animal digs a pit. Because again, Rashi notes, anytime it's something that the person owns at the time that it fell, could go in galolim, like in this case of the feces, or could go in shenaf legamalo, or let's say a person's camel fell, velo hamid, and he didn't stand it up properly, mechayvin le mishum bor. In all of those cases, the person is chayav mishum bor. We don't say there's an exemption of shor bor. V'afagav di'iu lo karya ela hagamol karo. Now, even though he himself didn't dig it, but it was dug by the camel, Kaven de Vishas Nefila Dideyu, since at the time that it fell it was his, the Olei Lesluke, and he has the responsibility to remove it. Kemo de Karyo Ihudami, it's the equivalent of him digging it. V'yafagav de Mafker Le Basar Shait, and even though later he makes it ownerless. V'lo Dami L'Shoro Shachafar Bor B'Rishas Harabim. This is not similar to a case of his ox that digs a pit in Rishas Harabim in the public domain. De Chafir Olav Didehi, that's something that digging does not belong to him. V'ledalil Haniksha Beregel Hatarnagol Me'elav, the Dalil Lav Didehi, were also something that gets tied to the foot of his chicken. It happens on its own. Again, that doesn't belong to him. That's not his responsibility. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rav, and Rava says, Nichnas l'chotzer balabayis shelo b'rishus. If a person enters into the courtyard of a balabayis without permission, v'hizik es balabayis, and he damages the balabayis, or balabayis huzak bo, or the balabayis is damaged by him, as Rashi explains again, v'hizik kari bein miskavin bein she'in miskavin. Hizik means that it happens whether with intention or not. Umiu biyadayim hiziko. The point is it happens actively, and huzak, being damaged and more passive, shezeh hayomed. That just means the person is standing b'mekomo, in place. Uva balabayis v'niskalbo, and the balabayis comes and stumbles over him. So again, in those situations where the person is there shelo b'rishus, so we say in both of those situations, whether it's hizik balabayis or balabayis huzak bo chayiv, in those cases the person is chayiv, and hizik balabayis potter. If the balabayis damages him, so then the balabayis is potter again, because the person is there without permission. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rapapa says, Lo amrna ela de lo hava yoda be. That's only true in a situation where he didn't know about him. Aval hava yoda be, but let's say he did know he was there. He ziko balabayis chayiv. So then if the balabayis causes him damage, the balabayis is chayiv. And the Gemara says, my time, and what's the reason? Mishum da'amar le, because he can say to him, Nihi de islach rishusa la'afuke, granted you have permission to eject me from your courtyard, you can make me leave, but la'azuke leslach rishusa, but to cause me damage, that you don't have permission to do, and therefore, again, if the balabayis knows that he's there, the balabayis is going to be responsible for the damage that he causes. And the Gemara continues, V'yazu l'tamayu, and they follow their reasoning. D'yamar Rava v'yitema Rapapa, because Rava said, and some say it's Rapapa who said, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Memches Amud Beis.